All right, I'm going to go over how we have been showing how we multiply decimals and whole numbers. And so let me get set up with my paper here, get all this out of the way. All right, so multiplying decimals and whole numbers. So we started off with models, and if you remember, when we have whole numbers, if we just do 3 times 5, that's the same as saying 3 groups of 5. And to find our total, we would do 3 groups of 5. So 5 plus 5 plus 5, that repeated addition, or we could count the tallies, and we get 15. When multiplying whole numbers with decimals, it's the exact same process. So here, notice we've got 3 times 15 hundredths. So this is 3 groups of 15 hundredths. So we're going to take 15 hundredths and we're going to do 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, since we're multiplying it by 3. When we add all those up, we get 45 hundredths. You could repeat it using the standard algorithm and doing that repeated addition like that. 15, 15, 15 is 45. And then you drop down your decimal. And then over here, we can show it with a model. So if we shade in 1500, so here's a 10 and a 5. And then we're going to do another 10 and a 5. And then we're going to do another 10 and a 5. So fill all that in. So we're shading in 3 groups of 1500s. And when you add them all up, that would be, you can count by tens because these are, when you go all the way down, that's 10 boxes. So each one of those columns is a 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40. And then over here, 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45. So that's your 45 hundredths. All right, so that was multiplying decimals and whole numbers with models. Then on the following day, we practiced how to do it with the algorithm. So here are steps. We've got 4 steps. So you're going to completely ignore the decimal until you get your answer. So you're going to set up the problem. Then you're going to solve the problem like any other multiplication problem. And you want to make sure that you always start in the ones place, just like normal. When you're done solving, you're going to count the scoops, and I'll show you what that is in a second, to each decimal in the problem. And then you're going to move the decimal that many scoops in your answer. Don't forget the decimal point. So here, let's look at some examples. So if we have 2 and 7/10 and we're multiplying it by 6, we're going to set it up like normal. So the one that has the more number of digits, put that one on top. And notice that the 6, normally when we write a 6, we would put the decimal at the end. And when we've been adding and subtracting decimals, it's been very, very important to make sure that that decimal point is there with the whole numbers and that everything is lined up and that the decimals get stacked on top of each other. Notice here when we're multiplying, that's not the same. That doesn't matter. So we can just leave the 6 in the corner here, and we're just going to multiply like normal. So 6, we start in the ones place. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4 more is 16. So you get the 162, 162. But then you're going to look for your decimal, and if you start over here on the right-hand side and you do a scoop under the number, and you notice that the decimal point's right there, right next to it. So this is 1 scoop. So here I'm going to go to my answer and I'm going to do the same, 1 scoop. So my answer is actually 16 and 2/10. And if you think about it, you're doing 6 groups of 2 and 7/10, which is about 3. And so if you did 6 groups of 3, that would be 18. So if we got the number 162, that would be way far off, much, much larger number. So think about what that would be when you estimate or get an estimate. And if it's close and it's reasonable, you're wanting to check for that. All right, over here, We've got we've got 4 and 322 thousandths times 14. So again, I'm going to start with my decimal because it has more digits. I'm going to put the 14 down and I'm going to multiply like normal. Start with my ones place. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 more is 17. I'm going to drop down my placeholder 0, and then I'm going to move to the tens place. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. And 1 times 4 is 4. Then I'm going to add those. And again, in this part right here where you've got these partial products, you don't need to worry about putting decimal places in there. We're going to save the decimal point for our answer. So here we're going to look for the scoops. So here's 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. I'm scooping under the numbers until I get to that decimal point. So there's no scoops in 14, so it's just 3 scoops. So over here, I'm doing 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. So 60 and 508 thousandths is your answer there. All right, there's a couple problems down here that you could try. Make sure you're using your steps. And then you can solve those either with a model or you can solve them with the algorithm, or if you do both, the answer that you get for the model should be the same as you get for your standard algorithm. All right, the next thing is now we're going to go decimal to decimal. So before we had a whole number, now we've got 2 decimals. So here we've got 4 tenths times 8 tenths. The first thing we're going to look at is what that would look like in a model. So remember when we did area and we said area equals length times width? Well, we're going to use that same idea, but we're going to use it on our hundreds grid. And so on one side of our hundreds grid, we're going to put our 8, we put 8 tenths over here. And so if you notice, here's going across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 tenths. And then on the other side, either the bottom or the top, it doesn't matter, just length times width, or these are technically side times side. You're going to do your 4 tenths. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you want to find the area that overlaps. So that right there is your answer, and you're going to count the squares. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 here, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 there, and 4 times 8 is 32. So you're in the hundred grid, so this would be 32 hundredths. With the algorithm, same thing. You're going to line them up and you're going to multiply just like you do normally, and you're going to count the scoops. But this time you're going to have scoops in 2 spots because you have a decimal in the first number and you have a decimal in the second number. So on 8 tenths, you've got 1 scoop. 4 tenths, you've got another scoop. So 1 scoop and 2 scoops equals 2 scoop, or I'm sorry, 1 scoop and 1 scoop equals 2 scoops. So when you get to your answer, 8 times 4 is 32, you've got to do your 2 scoops. 1 scoop, 2 scoops. So 32 hundredths. Same thing over here. This time your number was a little bit larger, 4 and 67 hundredths. So when you do that times 4 and 6 tenths, you've got 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. So over here you're going to do 1, 2, 3 scoops. So again, multiplication is all the same. The thing we're adding is the decimal with the scoops. All right, so when we start using bigger decimals, the models are going to be a lot harder to use because your number is getting, like over here, that 32 hundredths would fit into one 100ths grid. Over here, you would need 22 different hundreds grids to model this because that 21 is a whole number, and or actually you would need bigger because you're going into the thousands. So you would need a lot more grids for your bigger. So with the bigger numbers and or the bigger decimals, we want to use the algorithm. All right, so here's a couple on the bottom that you can check and see. Practice those. All right, and then here, this is just another example of modeling with hundreds grids. So here, I'm going to take my first decimal. Here's what I'm multiplying, 4/10 and 6/10. I'm going to draw the 4/10. I'm going to draw the 60 or the 6/10 or 60 hundredths. I'm going to find where they overlap, and that's going to be my answer. Here's that same problem, but with standard algorithm. So again, you just line them up, multiply like normal. 6 times 4 is 24. Then you count your scoops. So here it would be 1 scoop, 2 scoops. So then when you go to write your answer, you're going to do the 2 scoops. 1 scoop, 2 scoops. So your final answer is 24 hundredths. Notice this is not like adding and subtracting where we would just drop down the decimal, because if so, the decimal would be over here and it needs to be 2 spots over. So make sure you're counting scoops and you're not dropping decimals whenever you multiply. I think this is that same one we just did. That's the same one, and yep, all right, we just went over that. All right, so I hope that helps. There are some additional videos on the choice board that go over, let me show you here. If you click on the choice board from the agenda and you go down to the video supports. So this right here are the things that we finished up last week. So adding decimals, subtracting decimals, estimating sums and differences, and then word problems. And these over here, there's 8 videos. They all go over adding, or I'm sorry, not adding, multiplying decimals. So you can use that as a resource as well. And then once you're feeling confident that you've learned how to do that, then I would come over here and you have several games. There's quizzes you could see how you do. There's Google Classroom activities. And so go and try those out and get some extra practice that way. But let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.